You are about to listen to a Jason Burgos exclusive interview. What's your story, your background? How do you end up here as the head of the top Lethwei promotion in the world? Did you, have humble beginnings? Like, how do you get to such an interesting spot in your life?
For World Lethwei Championship, the company itself, it began before I even joined. My chairman, Mr. Zetiha, he's a big fan of mixed martial arts, and before even World Lethwei Championship was founded, his company was already the local event partner for One Championship events every time we come to Myanmar.
Okay.
And and the One Championship events in Myanmar are pretty crazy because the middleweight champion Angla and Sang is pretty big here.
Yeah, I talked to him, and they had a whole parade for him recently and made a statue.
Yeah, he's like a national hero, and they're not even kidding about it. And you ignore all that marketing talk, is truly crazy. And and yeah, he decided he wanted to do kind of the same thing that One Championship did, which is promote all the local martial arts through mixed martial arts. But he wanted to do it for the Burmese national sport of Lethwei. And Lethwei has a history that predates even Muay Thai, but because Myanmar has not been as open an economy as Thailand and hasn't welcomed as many foreign visitors, it's not as known to the international audience as the other martial arts. And we want to showcase Lethwei to the world. So that was how World Lethwei Championship was founded. And I used to work for One Championship, and I was in between jobs. I've left for about a year or so already, and I was in between jobs, and they wanted somebody to spearhead this promotion. So they asked the guys at One Championship if they had somebody to recommend. So I've been here 2.5 years since.
Were you into martial arts at all as a kid? Did you study this particular art? What's your personal background to further connect you to enjoying doing this and getting you that one job with One Championship? Do you have a deep passion for martial arts?
Yeah, I loved mixed martial arts since the first UFC one, and when I was 10, 11 maybe, when I saw Royce Gracie for the first time. So that was how I got into mixed martial arts. And then One Championship was basically a freelance job turned into a full-time job, and I was there for 3 years. So I've always wanted to work in the industry, and it just so happened I was lucky to get that opportunity. And and I was born in Singapore, so I never had the opportunity to be exposed to Lethwei as a child growing up when I was discovering all these different martial arts. But I do now, and I want to give other people that same opportunity.
Now, like I mentioned in our emails back and forth, I became familiar with the sport from an episode of Fight World. However, for those unfamiliar with it, explain what Lethwei is all about. What makes it unique? What makes it different? Especially you came from Singapore. You came from a different country. You had to learn about it yourself. What's Lethwei? Sum it up as best you can that makes it what it is.
I think I'll consider it the purest form of striking martial art in the world today. Lethwei dates back to about the 12th or 13th century.
Wow. And
if you see a lot of the ancient temples in Myanmar, there are drawings on the engraved into the walls of legendary Lethwei battles. It was used as a form of hand-to-hand combat in war during that time between the different empires in Southeast Asia. And it kind of evolved into what it is today. And what it is today is striking martial art that allows you to use your punches, elbows, kick, knees, but what really sets it apart is the use of headbutts.
Is there any kind of grappling? I'm not, any kind of more clinches and stuff like that allowed?
Yeah, so you can clinch in Lethwei, and you can throw the opponent on the ground. But unlike Muay Thai, which has over the years grown to be really technical, throws, trips, anything that gets your opponent on the floor doesn't score points. So to score points, you have to try to knock your opponent out. And I think that's what sets Lethwei apart from every other martial arts sport in the world, is that the fighters go in there trying to end that fight. They try to finish the fight because nothing else will help them score points to win it.
Now, tell me about the deal with the Netflix and Fight War. How did that all come together? And do you feel after it started streaming on the service, which is globally known, did it help bring more international awareness to WLC?
Yeah, so they showed that they came to do the entire episode on Lethwei, and the entire episode was really centered around our event. That was about 2 years ago, and we were only just beginning. That was our second event. We probably didn't know what we were doing half of the time, and it came out like way better than we expected it to. And since that episode aired, we in a much better place in terms of our television product, our live event experience, and we've got tons of people messaging us about being interested to participate in Lethwei, and we actually have talked to a few ex-UFC guys,
Nice.
a few prominent names that we are going to sign soon. So the momentum, I think that the Netflix series really was a trigger for us to get like a huge ball of momentum going right now. We signed with UFC Fight Pass. We're going to announce a ton of new fighter signings. We have featured. We have recently been interviewed by like BBC and the New York Times. So the momentum is really like we're really picking up steam right now.
When you guys worked out the UFC Fight Pass deal, did they mention that they became familiar because of the Netflix show? Or was it before that?
I think I can say for certain 100% the reason why we got that deal, but they were looking to diversify their content portfolio. So Lethwei is of course one of the martial arts that is as diversified and is as unique as it comes. So I think that's why they were interested in it.
And tell me a bit about WLC, like specific details, like how long has it existed? Is this from 2017 or is it a little before that? How many weight divisions are there? Do both men and women compete? And how has it grown since it first started?
We're our 8th event is going to take place on May 5th. In less than 2 weeks, and we did our first event like 2 years ago. So we've done a steady stream of about 4 events a year, and we basically signed all the top Lethwei fighters, and we've also complemented that with a lot of top Muay Thai fighters, K1 Dutch kickboxing style fighters, and who's never trained in Lethwei before, but they're as curious as fans in terms of finding out what it really is about. And we've done 8 shows so far, exclusively in Myanmar, in different cities across Myanmar. But we are targeting to continue our international expansion to include 1 international event this year and 2 next year.
Now, of course, I'm sure you have a large amount of talent that you can easily pull from. You just mentioned you get a lot from Myanmar and you're getting from other sports. But how do you go about finding foreign fighters? Because I'm sure as you go more international, you get bigger. You want to have different faces that people can relate to. Does their management contact you, or do you have like a scouting department that seeks them out? Like, how do you go about that?
Yeah. We have a bit of both. We get about let's say 10 really famous fighters every week or so that wants to fight in Lethwei, and we also go out and look for fighters. One thing that we realized is not everybody is really cut out to compete in this sport, and we've seen some of the top guys that you can think of that are interested in it, and then some guys who are not even that famous that will say no to it. So this is a wide range, and I think a lot of it is you have to have the right kind of mindset to compete in Lethwei. You have to really want to prove that you're the best fighter. If you want to analyze the fight and win by points and have one more punch than the other person, then this sport is not for you. If you really in the world of combat sports and in the world of martial arts to prove that you're the best fighter in the world, then be aggressive and constantly go for the knockout, then there's no better platform to do it.
You mentioned that you pull from K1 Muay Thai. Do you have to kind of explain what the sport is? So do you have to kind of convince them to try? Like, you go on Skype, it's like, man, this guy really fits what we do. You know, I would like to come fight. Do you have to explain it? And then in that time where you're pulling from that, has UFC Fight Pass and the Netflix show, has it made it easier for you to go and scout? Because you say, oh yeah, we're from, you know, WLC, and goes, oh, I know from this. Yeah, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think from the first couple of events where we were talking to foreign fighters, we had to do a lot of explaining of what we wanted to do. And I think with the Netflix show and with UFC Fight Pass, made our job a lot easier now. I just say, we're WLC, we're interested in having you over for a fight, and it kind of explains itself. So we don't have to explain as much now. It definitely helps.
Do you currently have any American or UK fighters on the WLC roster?
So we've had a few British guys. We've signed a few American guys so far. None of them have made their debuts yet. But I think I can share with you this is we've signed the best Lethwei fighter in the world right now. He's ranked #1 across any ranking system you can find. His name is Dave Leduc. He's Canadian, and he was the first foreign-born fighter to be crowned as like the best fighter in Lethwei. And for a long time, he was fighting in smaller promotions, and we finally reached an agreement with him. He's seen what we wanted to do, and now he wants to work with us to bring and expand Lethwei on the international stage. So we've signed him, and I can announce through you that he will be fighting in August, and his first opponent will be ex-UFC fighter with more than 10 fights.
Interesting. Now, you mentioned he's from Canada, right? Are there other countries in the world outside of Myanmar that are really like good Lethwei hotbeds that you can go to? Like, you know, he's from Canada. How did he get into it? Does Canada have a Lethwei kind of scene? Like, are there other places outside of Myanmar that are good resources for you?
Because Lethwei is not as known as other martial arts, there isn't really like a Lethwei school in a small town in England as there is for Taekwondo or Karate.
Right.
And I think that extends to our bigger vision of what we want to achieve. We want to get to that stage where you have kids training in little villages and towns all over the world. But so far, that's not the case yet. And a lot of these guys come from different backgrounds. But every time they get a taste of Lethwei, they're like, we want more. So since World Lethwei Championship has been established, we've seen a few smaller Lethwei shows coming up in Japan, in England, and in a few European countries. So it's been growing, and I think in a couple of years when we start seeing people from all these countries start training from the very start in Lethwei, we'll see a new breed of really, really world-class fighters.
In some of the stuff I've read or seen on the promotion, there is a divide building over modernizing the sport and traditional ideals. As you grow and evolve, and is every decision difficult because of fear of turning away traditional fans? And how do you try and balance both for the betterment of the organization and the sport long term to keep the traditional happy but bring in new fans?
Yeah. We had so much controversy when we did our first event about what we were trying to do to the sport, because the sport has not changed for the most part over 40 years. There have been big events in the same stadiums, in the same cities, for decades. And when we did our first event, there was a lot of controversy. Oh, these guys are killing the sport. What they're doing is bad. Is bad for the industry, and and it will become like any other sport in the future. But after they've seen what we've done, they understand what we're trying to achieve, and we're not changing, we're not revolutionizing the sport. We're adopting the same core values and core principles that made it what it is today. So if you've seen our event, we have the traditional prayer ceremony that happens before the event starts. When the fight happens, the orchestra will play music according to the tempo of the fight. After the fight ends, there's a traditional dance that the fighters do when they win, and we keep all of that core values during our events. But we also introduce a few things that we found that any world-class organization in any sport would have to do. Enhanced medical testing. We have streamlined the sport to be slightly faster for the international audience. We've introduced foreign referees and judges to show that there's no bias. We don't want a foreign fighter to come in and think that if they lose, it's because all the referees and judges are all the locals. So we've combined what the best practices of an international sporting organization is, while retaining the core values and principles of the sport.
And one of the main things I read that was about the rules, that their traditional rules are you have to knock out to win, and now it's about actual scoring. Is the scoring sort of like an overall scoring of the fight, or is it by rounds and then accumulated at the end?
It is scored by rounds, just purely by strikes per round, and there must be a 10-9 scoring system each round. There's a 20-point scoring system per round, and it's purely based on strikes. And we didn't invent that rule. So what happened was, about 20 years ago, this rule was invented in '94, when before that Lethwei had no fixed rule system, and they introduced two different sets of rules in 1994. But what happened was, in 1994, as most of the promoters were traditional, they didn't want to adopt this set of new rules, and we saw its value, so we revived it, kind of. But the misconception people make is that we tried to invent this ourselves, which we didn't. We've adopted an older rule that the pioneers of the sport have deemed fit even 25 years ago. So it's not like we're trying to change the sport itself. And I think what helps us from an international viewing audience too, because we need to, especially with so much new content available to viewers these days, with streaming, with social media. When somebody sits through a 3-hour sporting event, they need to have a definitive satisfaction of knowing who won and who lost. Nobody has the time to sit through a 3-hour event and see like 10 draws anymore. So it's not that we don't appreciate the nuance of a knockout only system where you can call timeout and delay the fight for as long as you want. It's just not feasible in this current day and age.
In highlights you sent me over, and I noticed the fighters fight in hand wraps, which I like, and an issue with bare knuckle fighting over here for some is that the knuckles lend to big cuts and more blood. Would you consider the league a bare knuckle fight league or more like a gloveless fight league?
Yeah, we don't shy away from either term, I think. Both terms are fine by us. And I think there's a big misconception when it comes to just using the hand wraps. There's actually been study done that proven that might be healthier and safer for you. It might not be as aesthetically pleasing in the short term, but it's actually better in the long term, and it causes less damage. And the difference that I think sets us apart from pure bare knuckle boxing, which a lot of people are still not accustomed to, is there's only one point of contact with bare knuckle boxing, which is your fist making contact with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Lethwei, it's more of a chess match because there's punches, kicks, elbows, knees, and headbutts. So there's basically 9 points of contact that you can use against to your left hand and your right hand when it comes to bare knuckle boxing. So it makes for a more nuanced and more exciting fight. So you don't see as much pure boxing.
Bare knuckle is starting to catch on a bit here, and you know it's growing in the U.S. So it's people are seeing that kind of action a different way without gloves, and the UFC Fight Pass deal I'm sure will help you in a lot too in reaching. Or have you noticed as you continue to try to expand the brand outside of Myanmar, have you noticed any markets that have really caught on? Like is Singapore, you know, Philippines, are there already strong markets you can really see already? Because you've already mentioned there's international plans eventually that like, wow, okay, yeah, these are great sources for Lethwei down the line.
Yeah, you've actually mentioned 2 of the cities that we're looking into in terms of going to in the future. Philippines, Singapore, and another thing that we want to do is not just, we've seen the success that Lethwei has because of World Lethwei Championship, but we want to also extend this to showcase to the Western audience, especially with our deal with UFC Fight Pass, is the different martial arts, traditional martial arts in this part of the world. So we're looking at going into Cambodia as well, to do Cambodian boxing and Lethwei in a joint event. We're looking at Vietnam as a potential destination. So either one of these countries in Southeast Asia where martial art has such a long history, we want to do a event showcasing their culture, their country, and as well as ours. Because if you watch our show, it's not just purely about fighting. A lot of it is about explaining the culture, the customs, the traditions of the country, as well as the touristy stuff. What's the popular places that people go to? What are the things that people eat there? The amazing people that live in the city. So all of our shows, every single city we go to, that's something we try to focus on. It's more of a cultural sporting experience. So for the international audience, Lethwei is already not as household name as most people recognize it to be. So while we explain to you this sport, we are also going to give you all of this information about the amazing things that you can do and experience in that country and that city. So it becomes an entire experience, and at the end of the 3-4 hours of watching our event, we want that person to be like, I want to go there and watch it live. I want to see the sport live. I want to experience the people. I want to experience the culture. So we want to do that for Myanmar, and we want to do that for our neighbors in Cambodia, in Vietnam, these countries where if you're living in the US, if you're living in the UK, you're probably not as familiar with as compared to like Thailand, where everybody knows. And then eventually the plan is to host an event in the United States. I've already been talking to a couple of like venues, a couple of sponsors there, and hopefully we can do an event there next year.
Do you have to do, like, say, for example, Bare Knuckle, they've done so far, I believe, Wyoming, Mississippi, and I think they're going to New Hampshire next. It's the only states that allow. Do you have to do the same thing? You have to go to those states that will allow Bare Knuckle, or what they, you know?
So we've talked to a few of the states that allow Bare Knuckle. So as long if they do allow Bare Knuckle, Lethwei would not be a problem. The other states that haven't legalized Bare Knuckle, we've been talking to them, but it's a process, and as they don't know that much about our sport as well, we want to educate them, we want to excite them about the sport and get them interested to host the event there.
Many MMA fans always dream of co-promotion. To further your name, would you be open to a concept where you did, say, a co-branded event with Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships here in the U.S., maybe even exchanging some talent, letting fighters on their roster fight Lethwei, your Lethwei guys fight boxing? Would you be open to something like that?
Yeah, I mean, we both use the same commentators. So Sean Wheelock commentates for both our shows. And he's told me a bunch about the guys there, and he told me about he put me in touch with a few guys who've been interested in fighting in Lethwei. So that's definitely something we are open to looking for to do more of. I think both of us are trying to showcase that there's more to martial arts than just MMA and just pure kickboxing. But of course, there's always going to be a bit of a logistical challenge in terms of the show, because we use a different size ring. The processes that go into each fight is kind of different. So I'm open to it. We'll see if we can do something together.
For those that read this, and thank you for the time. This is the last question. I really appreciate your time. For those that read the article or possibly even listen to the audio, tell me several fighters on the brand people should be interested and should seek out highlights of and look to find then the next time they compete for the WLC. Who are some of your stars that really must be watched to appreciate?
Our lightweight champion, his name is Antonio Faria, and he's from Portugal.
Okay.
And that guy's an absolute beast. He's fought a lot in different countries all over Asia, but the second he got into World Level Championship, he's fought 3 times. He won all 3. In his last fight, we put him up against the best Burmese guy we can find at his weight class. And it's not even his weight class. He used to fight at 60 kilograms, and we told him we have this opportunity to fight for a world championship in light welterweight, which is about 7 pounds heavier than his usual fighting weight, and gave him 2 weeks notice, and he said yes, and he knocked out his opponent standing. So he knocked his opponent out cold while he was standing, and that was incredible. So that's definitely one guy to look forward to see. And for Burmese, the Burmese fighter you have to look at is Soling U, Soelinoo, and his fans nickname him the Iron Man because he almost never gets knocked out. This guy fights guys that are two weight classes higher than him, 2 weight classes, that's like at least 15 pounds more than him, and he doesn't care. and he's impossible to knock out. He's had more than 50 fights, and I think he's got knocked out once. So that's definitely he's super popular too, and definitely one of the biggest stars in the country. And and the last one would be the Canadian guy I mentioned, Dave Leduc. He's basically fought every single Burmese fighter there is, and he's beaten them all, and now he wants to represent Myanmar and represent the sport as he fights like top guys from the UFC, from One Championship, from Glory, any big promotion. He wants to be the guy that welcomes them to compete in World Level Championship in Lethwei. So those are the 3 guys I think that if you're Googling, if you're going to go to YouTube and search for, those are the 3 you want to look at.
When Leduc comes into Myanmar, and fights some of the Burmese, stars or whatever, does he eventually get like fanfare, and do fans there like him despite being Canadian, or is it more nationalistic? And they're like, oh, he's like a Floyd Mayweather villain. Like, I hate this guy. He's always beating our guys. How does that work out?
Yeah, that's how it started. I think a lot of people started out rooting against him, and because of his dedication to the sport, he's basically turned down big money offers from every other promotion there is out there to purely compete in Lethwei. So people see that, and he's also been an ambassador to the sport across the world. You have to appreciate that. What he's doing for the sport and what he's doing in terms of promoting Myanmar internationally. So I think he started out a little bit as a villain, and now he's like really, really well known and loved in Myanmar.